took a risk on me when we got married 40 years ago. And, I don't know why that came into my head, but so at lunch, I challenged you to meet 3 people you never met before. Did anybody do it? Okay, someone did it. I did it. I met Ana Martin Jimenez from Tetra Tech. Thank you. I met Francesca No from Jazzwares. I met 2 guys from Disney. I think they're outside on a meeting, but Brandon Kikuchi and Chad Strickland. So I met 4 people at lunch. So, you know, yeah. and found out that Brandon Kikuchi actually worked at Northrop for 3 years. So anyway, okay. Our next panel will now explore how culture influences the food supply chain. So please welcome our moderator, Dimitri Gegis, and the panelists.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good.
Check.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. I'd like to start off by saying what an amazing event this has been thus far. And I want to acknowledge Dr. Nick Vyas, Marvi, the entire team at the Randall R. Kendrick Institute, Global Supply Chain Institute, for their stellar work in putting this event on. And I mean, they've spent countless hours for months now trying to provide a great experience for all of us. And I just ask that you all join me in a round of applause for the team. My name is Demetrius Gegis. I'm Vice President of Operations for Levitt Foods, Branding Iron Ranch, and Ranchers Processing. We are a marinated meats and ground beef company, meat manufacturer and further processor out of the Central Valley. We distribute to large-scale retail across the nation. And I've noticed, you know, as to kick this off over the past 17 years or so, a massive transformation taking place in how products are cultivated, procured, sold, distributed, and even consumed. And with procurement strategies changing, digital transformation taking place, it's been somewhat of a maze at times to try and navigate, right? We're now being presented by or with tools in the AI space. We're looking at everything digitally, but also trying to still hold on to the fundamentals of what our industries are built off of, and where we all kind of fit into the mix, right? How do we embrace this change willingly? How do we utilize it to our advantage while keeping company culture in mind as well? How do we still promote learning from the bottom up and really driving towards knowing fundamentals of business when a lot of these tools are taking those, you know, the spot of that? And I guess, in other words, how do we cultivate that within our industry now, right? And we've put together this panel of esteemed experts, and we're going to dive into these topics surrounding supply chain disruptions, sustainability, and culture, and how AI tools and autonomous work, advanced manufacturing all play a role in that now, and what that landscape really looks like. So I'd like to have the panel introduce themselves, give some insight into their professional backgrounds, and tell us a little bit about their journey thus far.
Start here. All right. Thank you, guys. My name is Carlos Londono. I am Vice President of Supply Chain for Chipotle Mexican Grill. Who here likes Chipotle? There we go, everyone. All right. That was funny. Every time that I tell anyone, oh, I work for Chipotle, everyone's like, I love Chipotle. So, you know, we've been working with USC ever since we transitioned our headquarter office to here to California from Denver. So I have USC graduates and students in my team at all times, right? And so Chipotle is one of those companies that has been at the forefront of technology in all areas of our business within food, right? Whether it's on the line serving food or in the back end in supply chain. So I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that, but I've spent the majority of my life in the food industry. I've worked here for Chipotle. I worked at Starbucks. I worked at Heinz. I worked at a variety of different companies. And as Dimitri was saying, we're always challenged to try to figure out how it is that we're going to manage the supply chain in this modern day. So it'll be interesting to hear from my colleagues here, their perspective.
Thank you. First of all, I'm very envious of your shoes, Carlos. Those are fantastic. My name is Neil Nersessian, and I have 30 years in the beer business, and I have probably made every mistake that you could make in that business. So that means I learned a lot. I found that out today, is mistakes are how we learn. Now I'm Chief Operating Officer of a company called Silver King Beverage and Company, and we are in Salt Lake City, Utah, and we are the only facility in the U.S. that manufactures cans and fills them in the same facility. So tariffs is obviously very exciting for us with aluminum and everything that's going on today. I'm looking forward to this discussion about culture, which is one of my favorite topics.
Thank you, Neil. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Philippe Lambot. I'm right now running my own business in consulting. Ironically, some of the key topics about tariff management. So if you have any question about tariff, see me at the break. I think it's a hot topic. Before that, actually, I worked for many different industry and company. So I started my career with Procter & Gamble, and I spent 22 years with Kraft Foods. This is obviously the food business before it was merged with Heinz. I also worked 7 years in the pharmaceutical industry, leading supply chain with Merck and Johnson & Johnson. And the last years, I was part of a startup, which is Tonal in the fitness industry. So as a Belgian, yes, I did build a chocolate factory. So I'm very proud of that. And we talked yesterday, Randy was talking about the career of people that have built different supply chain to become global. I recognize myself in what he said, because in the 90s, when I was working with Kraft Foods, we worked and I was part of the group that really went from a bunch of very local company, we were buying at the time in the 90s, one company a month. And we created a global company spending, having revenue of $50 billion. This seems like a different galaxy by now. Obviously, we're going in a different direction, but hopefully this will be useful for the discussion today.
Thank you. I am Prathamesh, and honestly, I'm a product of this Global Supply Chain Summit that was there back in 2021. I was a part of Cohort 8 and currently work as a senior product manager for Amazon Groceries, primarily looking into the worldwide tech and how we combine businesses across our different banners of Whole Foods, 3Ps, and our own .com businesses that I have. As my friends have pointed out, I am not a part of Cohort 8, I am a part of Cohort 9, so sorry about that.
I was about to say something. Come on.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bhaskar Tadke. I'm Vice President of Supply Chain Planning at Niagara Bottling. Me and my team and I, we are responsible for a lot of things in the world of supply chain planning, all the way from demand and supply planning to building our networks, building and designing our networks to support the growth of a bottled water company that we are leading. Niagara Bottling, many of you may not know, we are the largest private label bottled water company in the US. We have over 50 production facilities all over the US, and we manufacture bottled water for any grocery store that you typically buy bottled water from. In addition to that, we have gotten into contract manufacturing for large brands like Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, as well as Nestle Waters. And we are happy to say that the growth has come from both the private label industry as well as on the contract manufacturing side. Happy to be here. What a great conference, and exciting to meet all the panel.
Thank you, everybody. And as everyone can probably see, we're going to be providing you with a lot of diverse perspective on these topics. And I guess I'd like to kick it off first to you, Carlos. Being where you are and with the company that you're with, there are a lot of different moving pieces within the supply chain. Could you give us an example of what you're currently facing as far as biggest issues within the supply chain, challenges, disruptions, and how mitigating those issues now looks different, or what it looks like now opposed to 10 years ago?
Perfect. Thank you so much. So as you guys know, the objective of Chipotle is to cultivate a better world. And so our mantra is what we call food with integrity. And so for those of you, obviously you told me that you like Chipotle very much. Chipotle is a very special supply chain, what I call a hyper specialized supply chain, because we don't allow antibiotics, we don't allow beta agonists, we don't allow any additives or preservatives or anything like that. And so inevitably what happens when you're running a supply chain like that is you narrow your supplier base in a very dramatic way. And so inevitably it forces you to be an inherently global supply chain. So you have to be able to source things from everywhere. And so when there's a small disruption, any geopolitical issue, like the team before us was talking, one little thing immediately sends ripples through the supply chain. And so you have to be always on call. And so I have a team of students that is actually currently, I'm looking at Tanya over there. They're currently in my organization doing their internship. And I was talking to them the other day and they asked me the same question, right? And I said, listen, what I would suggest if you're a student is always be watching the news, because no matter how insignificant something might be, there's one way or another is going to affect you. And so I love telling stories. Tanya's like, oh my God, tell stories. So I'm going to tell you guys a story. So who likes the guacamole at Chipotle, right? Guac's phenomenal, right? Well, it turns out that avocados were practically inexistent in the US in the like maybe 20 years ago. And so with the introduction of California avocados and things like that, guacamole all of a sudden started becoming a really important thing. And so the folks in the Mexican industry decided to start raising this avocado called the Hass avocado. And what's special about that avocado is an avocado that has a thick like outer shell, and so it travels really well. So from a supply chain perspective, it's a great product. And so sure enough, Chipotle launched the guacamole, it was a massive success and so on. And so what the Mexican industry had done is position themselves in a really phenomenally strategic position, right? Because right now, believe it or not, 90 to 95% of the avocados that are consumed in the United States come from Mexico. And so, of course, as the team before us also mentioned, that when you have one single source of supply, it becomes unbelievably risky, right? And so as the tariffs, as Felipe was mentioning, started to present themselves a few months ago, we said, wow, well, like if all of a sudden we have a tariff on Mexico, it's going to be brutal for us, right? And so sure enough, we started this diversification strategy. You know, we went to Peru, we went to Chile, we went to our area places. But the one country that was proven to be phenomenal was Colombia, right? So sure enough, we came up with the strategy and we decided to source a very, very large amount of avocados from Colombia. And we were all like high-fiving and we were like, oh my goodness, you know, we're gonna save money, resiliency in the supply chain, all these things. And so sure enough, that's what, so that the Saturday morning, right, I'm just chilling at home, right? And all of a sudden my phone, boop, 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 started blowing up. All my executives, everybody's like, oh my God, what just happened in Colombia? And I'm like, I'm looking, and it turns out that the president of Colombia, not a fan, decided to pick up a fight with President Trump, right? And President Trump was like, oh, really? Okay, 40% tariffs on Colombia. My heart just sunk to my stomach. I'm like, oh, for the love of God, right? And so sure enough, I spent my Saturday and my Sunday calling everyone in the Colombian government, right? Trying to work with folks and saying, for the love of God, get this person to retract himself. And by the end of Sunday, sure enough, he had retracted himself. The tariffs had come down back to 15%. And it was like a big moment, right? But that's the kind of situation that happens in global supply chains. That all of a sudden, a comment on X of some politician ruins your supply chain, right? And so those are the kinds of things that I'm kind of contending with. Sorry to be long-winded here.
And may I add to that point exactly? Is it avocados, being in the produce industry primarily for the majority of my career leading up to now, the biggest aspect within your thought process, if you're sourcing from Colombia, Nicaragua, Brazil, New Zealand, wherever it may be globally, you, especially with produce or a perishable item, you're just hoping to God it travels and it gets there. Then to have to bring into effect the geopolitical tensions, you know, you're sitting there going, this wasn't what I was expecting. Now I have to worry about this and still worry about whether the product's still going to arrive. without any issues,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. And I think with the interesting thing about this panel is that food, you have but like a second to manage your supply chain, right? Because things perish immediately. And so in the case of avocados, avocados are one of the only fruit that doesn't ripen on the tree. If you leave it on the tree, it's not going to ripen. You have to pick it, and then it ripens once it's picked because it emits ethylene gas, right? And so what's interesting is there's now this whole doctrine, this group, we actually have a network of ripeners around the US that control that ethylene, right? And so they add or remove the ethylene to get the fruit to ripen just exactly right so that it arrives at the restaurant at Chipotle. Get ready for this term, guac ready, right? Stage 5 guac ready, which is as soon as it arrives at the restaurant, but because we make the guacamole fresh every day from fruit. I don't know if people know this, right? But as soon as it arrives at the restaurant, the operator has to be able to cut it open. It has to be ripe. And so to manage that is exactly what Dimitri is saying. It's like all of these parts have to function exactly right so that it arrives at the exact moment so that you can make your guac. So now you're like, oh God, now the tariff is all of a sudden going to add or remove lead time from my operation. Very complicated, right?
Are there AI tools that could mitigate the situation between the Colombian president and our current president?
So believe it or not, we actually it actually sounds comical, but yes, there are, right? And so we're investing a very, very large amount of money to come up with these models to give us some predictive idea of exactly how it is that we should manage the supply chain in those cases, right? So one of the interesting things about produce, which our colleagues would mention, is that they have a life of their own, right? And so there's times of the year where you have crops. So you have to maneuver based on those crops. And you can actually utilize artificial intelligence to help you figure out, based on all of these variables, where exactly you should be sourcing, right? It's not as simple as like, it's December, yeah, I'll source from Brazil. No, no. Well, what if all of a sudden there's an election year or whatever it might be? All of those factors affect your decisions.
I think that being said, taking into consideration multiple avenues of procurement or say resourcing or whatever, looking at different regions, and then looking here domestically as well, we had talked about labor constraints and things that are tied into that as well. And I'd like to go to Neil with this one and kind of get your insight on, are we seeing labor constraints? Is there a skilled labor shortage within your space currently? And I mean, how do we mitigate that? How do we continue to survive, much less thrive in that environment?
That's a great question. I spent a lot of time on this over the last couple of years, and we've been looking at what do we do about skilled labor. And I could tell a lot of stories as well. I think it's really important to. I was on a panel advising a bunch of tech geniuses in San Francisco about 8 months ago, and they were telling me how this problem was all going to be solved with AI. And I said, yeah, I think you're a little bit jaded, and maybe a decade from now, maybe 2 decades from now, but the laptop class is not going to be in the plant making cans at 2 o'clock in the morning and making sure that the cupper, when the cupper goes down, they know how to rebuild the chute, right? And so all of these things are happening, and the skill, and if you look at the can, I'll use can making as an example. Can making has 3 or 4 really big operations across the world, and they have very strong engineering talent. And those people that are in that strong engineering talent have 40 years of experience. So let's think about how long those people are going to be working in that. And then the people that are working on the floor, the average tenure is probably 35 years. They're the last generation to have a full pension that they're going to retire with, and that's all coming due now. So they're all going to leave. And then we're trying to make cans in a facility in Salt Lake City where cans have never been made. And we're trying to bring talent in, train that talent. So we bring in talent that knows how to do it, and then we're training them, having them train other people. And our efficiencies are, 50% of what we would expect to have at this point. So we're really driving towards how do we do that? And I think that there's this belief that technology is going to solve all these issues. And I have a bigger fear, and that is that because we have so much technology in some areas, we don't rely on expertise. So I'll give you another example. I've worked with a lot of people who, and a lot of people in this room, anybody who's in supply chain can talk about how to build a pallet, right? and how to build a pallet and what slide angle means and why a pallet pattern matters and all these kind of things. And everybody says, well, technology does it. Well, when technology goes wrong and something goes wrong and it takes the human element to get involved, those people aren't around anymore. I'm calling a friend of mine that's 82 years old and asking him, hey, can you help me with this? I got some shifting pallets on this load. Can you tell me what to look at? And he answers the phone, but maybe in 10 years, he's not going to answer the phone, right? And so this is a big challenge. And we're failing people thinking that all they need to do is learn the technology when they really need to learn a skill set. And I'll go back to one thing you said before about telling stories. You like to tell stories. I would encourage all the students here who don't have any professional stories now, find them, make them, find them everywhere. And what I'm doing with culture, and I'll take a little trip into culture. What I'm doing with culture right now on the plant is aligning incentives, trying to make sure that everybody understands what they're a part of. But even more, I have worked long enough to have 3 or 4 really big stories about my career and some of the things that I've been in teams that have done phenomenal things, and I've done some less than phenomenal things myself, and I can tell those stories. And what you need to do to get people engaged, because they're looking for a job for 2 to 3 years and then they're going to leave. This doesn't work in specialized industries. What you need to do is get them engaged in, hey, this is a story we're going to tell 2 or 3 years from now. We're going to talk about how we were the first facility to make cans more efficient than the big guys in a city that never made cans before. Do you want to tell that story in 3, 4, 5 years, in 20 years to your grandkids? And these are the kind of things that you have to do to build the culture and to get people engaged and to get people working on the same team.
Completely agree with you on that. And I guess I'll segue into a little bit more of the culture discussion, because we just brought it up. And I want to go down to Bhaskar. All of us on this panel, we've all touched on this and talked about the importance of interpersonal communication within the workplace, the human touch, the human aspect that is necessary within the food and beverage industry, in my opinion at least. Where do you see culture falling as far as the priority in the organizational priorities? Where do you see it falling?
In my opinion, it should be right up there. And I'll explain why. It should be synonymous to selling your next widget or operating your manufacturing lines better. It should be right up there at that level. If I ask all of us what will be the most critical things for us to make a successful company, the shortlisted answer would be we'll need a good strategy, we'll need good people, and we need great execution. We don't often talk about culture. But for me, what ties all those 3 together is culture, right? And at Niagara, what we do is we are trying really hard to protect the culture that we have of entrepreneurship, innovation, and success that is driven through those areas. So what we do internally is we have this program called Niagara Life, or LIFE program. It's an acronym which stands for Lead Like an Owner, I stands for Innovact, F stands for Find a Way, and E stands for Empowered to be Great. Neil, you mentioned about storytelling. What we do is we bring on employees who kind of emulate these tenets, these values, and we ask them to tell their stories about how they were empowered to be great in the organization. We ask them to tell stories about how they found a way in solving some problems and through critical thinking actually developed a skill set. So that actually forms the culture for newer talent that has come in to emulate those type of skill sets as well. So culture is right up there, and we are trying our best to preserve the culture and pass it on to the new employees and the next generation.
I guess that being said, how do you integrate new ways of doing things with, say, AI and tools such as ML and whatnot, while still trying to cultivate that culture of success without, I guess, freaking anybody out that may be 25 years into their career rather than just entering the workforce?
I don't think we have used AI yet for building a culture. What we are doing, though, is we are trying to get experiences and have employees share those experiences, which become a muscle that we typically have built over time, right? So some of us who grew up in this organization have seen the company grow from 7 production facilities to over 50 production facilities in the US. We have homegrown this culture of vertical integration, entrepreneurship, and so on and so forth. It's hard to emulate. It's hard to train an AI model. So it's a responsibility of human intelligence as opposed to artificial intelligence to train the next generation. I don't know. I'm looking at AI and software professionals to maybe one day build a cultural fabric through AI. But right now, I think humans have a huge role to play in developing culture.
I agree with you on that. Does anybody else have insight as to what Oscar just mentioned?
Well, I will mention I'm advising for a company that is producing AI software for operations specifically that's helping to write itself, and that's one of the biggest things that we're using in order to integrate and also in order to sell. Because my appeal to advise for a company like that was I'm a 50-something-year-old man who has been working in business for a few decades, and I know that I need to figure out how to use AI to accelerate my business, but I have no idea how to do that, or at least I didn't a couple of years ago. And now I'm starting to work with them, and I'm saying, okay, how do I responsibly bring the technology in to Bhaskar's point around making sure that it integrates with the culture that I want to create, but also when you talk about how do you change the culture for people who might be working, everybody has this fear. The people who've worked for a couple decades, they're afraid of what they don't know. And so when you can teach them and bring that in, then they are not reluctant to learn, they're eager to learn, but you have to bring it to their level and you have to meet them where they are and then go from there.
But so are young people. Actually, one of my group of interns, one of the questions that they asked me was, "Oh my God, Carlos, are we going to be replaced with AI?" And I looked at them and I'm like, "You have absolutely nothing to fear. At least not for the next 50 to 75 years. Nothing to fear, right?" And so it's interesting because every couple of years, we'll be here in this panel, and there will be the topic that is hot at the moment, right? And so a few years ago, I was talking to the guys the other day. A few years ago, it was all about like, oh my goodness, like with the cryptocurrency like so hot and stuff like that. What are we going to do about? What was the thing back then? Do you guys remember? Blockchain. What do we do with blockchain? And I remember Nick Vyas was actually sitting with us here, and I said, Nick, you know what, man? Like, no one is using blockchain in supply chain. No one is ever going to use blockchain in supply chain. We have real constraints, like what Neil is saying. We need the guy to fix the machine, man. Like, it's like at some point, maybe 50 years, 75 years, somebody may mention blockchain and may use it again, right? AI is no different than any other tool, right? Like, and I was actually using the example of the cotton gin, right? I'm sure that when they introduced the cotton gin at the end of the 1800s, people were like, oh my God, what's going to happen to my job? I used to be the little combs, like combing the cotton, right? And sure enough, temporarily probably got some efficiency, right? But the reality is these tools will allow us to be much more effective at what we do, utilize capital more effectively. But I'm not sure if you necessarily need to be afraid of it, right? And so one of the things that I try to do is dispel that fear, dispel that notion that, oh my God, this is something that's threatening me. Why? It's not necessarily threatening you. Actually, if anything, embrace it, learn how to use it on your behalf, and make yourself successful as a result of having it, right?
Yeah, and to piggyback on this one, what Carlos just said, I mean, as the saying goes, a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? I like really what Abhi just said from ASCM earlier today about the problem framing. If you don't know which problem you're solving, AI will not help you. And I think we're overblowing this a lot. I think the fundamental is, do you know, or do we have as leader in our company, do we understand what we're trying to solve? And then AI might be the only solution in the future or a solution right now. I think, let's make sure we get the basics right.
I want to add a little bit to this, and this is probably a little counterintuitive of what we have talked about. I'll explain the situation. So, being a tech partner here, I have been building tech for worldwide grocery FCs for Amazon. We have FCs in Japan, we have FCs in Europe, and we have FCs in US. There is one regional area, the northeast of US, where my FCs are half the efficiency of what Japan produces. Everything is same, like same processes. I think the US has better FCs. I took the same concept here, where we drilled down on a problem that we are not able to solve the labor pool problem in Bronx, and we have to do something about it. We installed an entire ASRS system. Again, like we are broadening the definition of AI. What and how are we collecting data is very important. We built a system that is up over 99% of the total time. It's improved the efficiency by almost 1.5% and is having an ROI of 4 years. So I am going back to the same thing, that we need to solve the right problems, but they are possible and they are here. So accepting them is a super important part, which is a part of our foundational supply chain cultures for food as we go ahead.
Can I come in real quick? AI is such a fantastic topic, and I'm a big believer in it. I'm getting my team to be focused on autonomous planning and completely using AI to do planning for Niagara. Having said that, my view on AI today, and even for the next few years, is AI is like a candy wrapper, right? What's in it is more important sometimes than the wrapper itself. The candy has a lot of things that you are more interested in. And to use that analogy in business, I would say that you need to have good processes, you need to have good data, and you need to have a good technology on which you can wrap around AI to make sure that it actually works for you, right? So think about it from that perspective. It is not an end-all be-all today, but if you have the right processes and structural fundamentals under it, it could be fantastic for every organization.
I do want to take that, but also kind of pivot into the next section of our discussion, which sustainability. Still sexy, has been sexy for years now, but I want to go to Philippe on this one. I guess first off, what kind of tools, AI tools, have you seen within your experience that are being utilized for sustainability? And I guess, can you explain what you see as for sustainability, what's driving food supply chain evolution? How is sustainability driving that evolution?
Right. So big topic. Obviously, I think about climate change and sustainability as definitely a topic that doesn't have to be sexy because it is fundamental to our existence. I think what's really changed, back to what Prathamesh also said, is about measure, right? So in the past, we had those broad statements about, yes, we need to be more sustainable, but I think the footprint of every company is measuring the footprint, their footprint, what they can control and what they cannot control. And in preparation for the discussion, I actually asked ChatGPT about a few consumption number of product, right? So Neil, you probably know that. How many liters of water do you need to make 1 liter of beer?
Depends on how good you are, but the best are 2.8.
Okay, well, I had ChatGPT told me you need about 60 to 150 liter of water, all in.
Oh, all
right?
in, okay.
All in,
Okay.
so you need to measure. So it gets worse from there, right? 1 kilo of cheese, 5,000 liter of water. 1 kilo of beef, which everybody knows, with methane, and when you measure the whole cycle, hold for this, 15,000 liter of water. Okay, so I think those number, and I was part of the food company when we started to measure our cheese footprint. We thought, hey, this is pretty good. We can do better in the factory, until we realized that 95% of the footprint was outside. So to answer your question, it's a very complex. Companies have to measure, but I think it's beyond that. You have to re-engineer the way you make the products. And I was talking to some of you yesterday. There are vertical farms, for example, right, that are fundamentally changing the way we manage and grow vegetables, right? When I was living in London way back when, there was a survey that came out because it was very fashionable to grow tomatoes and vegetables in your garden. Now, there was a scientific survey where they looked at how much pesticide those vegetable in the back of your garden had. And they found that they had about 5 to 10 times more pesticides than the one you could buy at your supermarket, because, you know, you were not just professional. I mean, you just grow and you put too much, you know, pesticides. So product like Bowery Farm or Aero Farm are now starting to use AI to truly meter to the water drop how much water, when does every single plant need to grow optimally. And that's completely re-engineering. Obviously, you're not going to change the ecosystem of a beef, right? If you still need cow, but you can re-engineer the way you grow plant. And those are the type of AI application that truly excite me in the future, because we have to completely redesign the way we work in a way that AI is fundamental in the whole process, not just an automation on top of it. And, you know, I think that that's basically where I believe we're going with AI here, Dimitri.
Can I actually say something? So sustainability is such a core part of the values and beliefs of Chipotle that we have a massive team that is only dedicated to sustainability. And so it's a bunch of folks that are PhDs, and my goodness, like they're unbelievably smart. And so the objective of this is to make sure that we have academic footing to be able to prove that we are in actuality making a difference in sustainability. And the thing that has been the most perplexing to me in the last 7 or 8 years is how little academic foundation the claims that you see today on the news and stuff like that have. No one knows, right? And so, you know, at one point we were in one of these meetings, and it reminded me of this Homer Simpson. It's like, I read it on the internet, so it's got to be true, right? It's one of those, right? And so let's talk about methane, for example, right? Like, we are delighted to have beef and beef products in our menu. We love beef, right? And so we always want to try to figure out how to reduce the carbon footprint of beef, right? And so we started really, really digging in about 8 years ago at how exactly to quantify precisely, like by head of cattle, what that methane emission was, right? And at the end of years and years and years of study, the best solution that we found through the best universities in the world was, we usually kind of estimate, right? We could be wrong. We're like, oh my God, you guys don't know. I was like, how can you publish these papers and stuff like that? You don't know. Like, for example, measure. Has anyone ever measured how much a cow emits? Well, not really, but and I'm like, oh God, right? So I think one of the things that has been a tremendous challenge in the world of sustainability is you have to have academic footing. You have to have people researching and really doing the work, not estimations and things like that, right? Like
The
that
expertise. You have to have the expertise.
Correct.
I think that goes back to what we were saying about entering the workforce or an industry, actually learning and acknowledging the fundamentals of that industry and going through the proper channels to become that expert, to be able to report properly and to really thrive, I guess. You know, a lot of great points. And I think we have within the scope heard a lot of great perspective from all of you, but I think I'd like to ask now, I'd like to hear all of your perspectives on what you feel the next big hurdle or milestone or goal would be for each of us within the food and beverage industry, and what that looks like. And whoever would like to go can jump on it first.
I can go first, right? So I'll tell you what it is. It's people, right? It's people. It's not technology. It's not anything like that. It's not AI, nowhere remote to AI. It's people. And I'll tell you why I'm so adamant about this, right? You know how like you always hear this cliche, oh, people are the most important part, right? No. People are the most important part, right? So if you're a serious business, you have to start acting like people are the most important part, right? And so one of the things that I worry about is I actually personally work very closely with this university to make sure that the people that are coming out as professionals in supply chain are prepared for what's ahead, right? And it's very difficult, right? And so, you know, when you sit down and you look at the challenges ahead, right, you're going to have to know about so many things. You have to be an expert in so many things. So I'll give you two, right? Two things that you, as any supply chain professional, especially the students, have to be phenomenal at. Number one, finance, right? You have to be phenomenal at finance, because at the end of the day, everything that you do has financial implications. You have to be able to articulate and explain what exactly it is that your project is doing or the performance of your business and so on. And that actually gets me to my second recommendation, which is communication, right? So the other day I was walking around with my team and I came to talk to one of the young ladies there, and I looked at her computer and she was texting on her computer the girl that was like right beside her. And I was like, are you guys texting each other? And they started laughing. And I'm like, come on, man. Like you're like right there, man. Come on. So we started laughing, right? But it really is no laughing matter, right? It's great to use the technology and to be proficient at the technology. That's wonderful, right? But at the end of the day, as Neil said, I'm a maybe 40, 50 something person, right? I'm going to be around for a really long time. And the folks that like you guys, when you need the money to do your projects, you guys are going to have to come to us, right? For the money. And we want to look at your eyes, right? We're very interested in your AI and your technology and all that stuff. But what we're buying is you. That's what we're buying, right? And so it's very important for you to be very well versed in the financials so that you can explain to me how this is going to make money for my company. And second, you have to be very, very good at communicating, very articulate, know your topic really well, and be able to communicate it so that you can ultimately get your funding and be successful. That's my main worry, people.
I'm going to piggyback off yours. I'm going to use two different ones though, but I'm going to say they have to be kind. And I don't want anyone to confuse kind with nice. I messed this up for like the first 20 years of my life. First 20 years of my career, I was, believe it, well, I was neither kind nor nice. And I couldn't figure it out, right? And then at some point I clicked that because I'm my authentic self, I don't always have to be nice, but I do always have to be kind. And in fact, it is really, really unkind to be nice all the time. You all know that person who is nice to you all the time. You're doing a great job. Hey, you look great today. No, I don't, because I had too many beers last night. And I'm coming. You know, whatever the reason is, that's not necessary, right? You have to be honest about people's what you expect and what works, but you also have to do that in a way because you're trying to help that person, because you want that person to be successful. If you confuse those two, you're in big trouble, and you won't make it as a leader. And it did impact my career early on because I didn't think I needed it. And then the second one also impacted my career early on, which is curiosity. I thought I knew everything. I thought, why would I go ask so-and-so about this when I can do it myself, when I can figure it out myself? And what I learned actually after being in a huge company and being more entrepreneurial is that I miss those people around that I could ask. There's someone in this room today that's smarter than you on you can find somebody who's smarter than you on every single subject. If you can't, you're in the wrong room. Okay? So you need to be curious, and you need to be kind. And when I say curious, I'm looking out today and I see a lot of students, and I see a lot of people, well, a lot of people have left already, but I see a lot of people who've achieved big things and who are going to continue to achieve big things in their career. And I would encourage the students to be bold enough that if you've heard someone today or yesterday or the day before, or you've seen someone or been a party to a conversation and you know you want to learn something from that person, go ask them. Ask them if they will mentor you. Ask them for an hour a month. Ask them for an hour a week. Just try. Because if you don't do that, if you don't show that humility, you're not going to get what you need to build your own career. And don't be shy about it, because if you're shy about it and you don't do that, then you get what you get, right? That's my not being nice, okay? You're going to get what you get. And I'm telling this to you, being kind, saying go for it. Reach out to the people that you see here, because we're all giving our time because we're interested in your future, and we're interested in making sure that you're able to guide what's going on, because it is a very interesting time. And I said I wasn't going to talk about AI, so I won't. But technology is evolving, and with technology evolving, we don't know what's going to happen, and we need help from you, and you need help from us. So let's do it together.
That was great.
I don't know.
I appreciate that.
I don't even know what question I'm trying to answer anymore.
No, it was revered. So yeah, I do want to go to Bhaskar. I know he wanted to say something. We have about a minute left. But I'd really love to hear your perspective
Since
on
the
that.
question was about challenges or hurdles, right? I would like to make a point that, hey, we are in an interesting time where cost optimization and margin compression is a real problem in food supply chains, right? There's a lot of volatility in the industry, and raising prices may not always be the solution to protect your margins. So we as supply chain professionals or future professionals, we have to get good at low-cost leadership. We have to understand how do we cut cost out of our operations, whether it comes from buying better or running your lines better, managing your inventories and warehouses better. That is a skill that was never out of fashion, should not be out of fashion today, and should remain in fashion even in the future, right? So low-cost leadership is your competitive strategy in food supply chain. Please maintain that, and that will help us get the volatility of margin compressions, cost optimization pressures. We can beat those through low-cost leadership.
Perfect. Thank you very much, everybody, for taking your time and sharing your perspective with everybody here today. And I guess that's going to wrap up our panel discussion. We didn't leave enough time for questions, but maybe next year, right? So, but thank you, everybody, for coming and for allowing us the time up here. Go Cohort 9.